Yes, this is John G. Sutton, Tales from the Jails. Well, thank you very much for watching this. I want to talk a little bit today about what I know of the Kray twins. You know, the notorious 1960s hoodlums that believed they were gangsters. And in a way, they were gangsters. They were thugs. And they were supposedly tough guys. But let me tell you this. When the Kray twins were remanded in custody at Brixton prison, they were on a landing in Brixton prison that was run by a friend of mine who was I subsequently met at Wormwood Scrubs, who was called John. I won't tell you his full name, but his name was John. He was an Irishman who was about 6'2", 6'3", big fella, about 17 stone, and extremely dangerous man. You know, he was himself quite a violent character. And on his landing in Brixton prison, there came the Kray twins, Ronnie and Reggie Kray. And they started coming the old soldier, you know, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, trying to overtake the way that John ran the wing. Now, John was not a man to be messed with, and he wasn't too keen on these two East End gangsters trying to tell him how he was going to run his wing. So John shot the bolt on the door. You know, the cell doors have a little like a catch on. And if you hit the catch, it shoots the locking system out, so it won't lock. You know, you've got to open it with a key. Well, he had the key, you know. So he went into the cells with the Kray twins. They were in the cell, and John advised them, said, I've had enough of hearing what you two are going to do on this wing. This is my wing. He said, and there's only one hard man in this prison, and I'm telling you, it's not either of you two. And in the event that there's any more messing around on my wing and you don't do exactly what I tell you, he said, I am going to give the pair of you the beating of your lives. And with that, he locked them into the cell, went about his duties. Of course, the problem was that that's not how you spoke to Ronnie and Reggie Kray. They thought that they were still, although they were in Brixton prison, remanded for the murder of, was it Jack the Hat McVitie and other people, you know, the Mad Axeman, Mitchell. Yeah, well, that's not how you spoke to them. So, listen, I'm telling you, I knew John. And both those Kray twins together, they wouldn't have lasted 2 minutes. He would have picked one up in each hand and banged their heads together. Except that's not how you fought the Kray twins. So what happened was they put out the message into the outside the jail, and the word came in that John had got a price on his head, that they wanted him stopped. Now, the Home Office and all the rest of it, they started to obviously panic about this. So John was sent for by the governor and transferred. They removed him out of Brixton prison and transferred him to Wormwood Scrubs, which is where I met him. And he was a very decent man, very big, strong man. I'll tell you a story about me and John. Were one day sent on a production that's taking a prisoner from the Scrubs to the Magistrates' Court, Bow Street Magistrates' Court. Now, Bow Street Magistrates' Court has underneath it a set of cells, but the main incarceration area under the Bow Street Magistrates Court. These are very old Victorian court, you know. I think it's been pulled down now or changed use anyway, but really something to see, because they had like cages, big metal iron cages. They've been there 150 years, nearly 200 years when we got there, you know. So we were in the cell area. I mean, we just sat down, all these cages, you know, they had one cage full of hooers, you know, seriously. Maybe about half a dozen hookers in there, still dressed in their attire, you know, typical hookers look, you know. I mean, not that I know what a typical hooker looks like. That's my story. Seriously. But they were dressed, you know, in the black tights and tight skirts and red tops and tits popping out and all the rest of it. They were in there for obviously offering their wares in Piccadilly and what have you, but they were waiting for the magistrates under the court at Bow Street Magistrates, and we put our prisoner into a cell, because he had a cell as well, only a couple of cells, but we used a cell for our inmate because he was already an incarcerated convicted prisoner being produced from the scrubs. And we were just sat down, John and I, having a little cup of tea, I think we were having, you know, something non, just passing the time of day with the police sergeant who was in charge of the lockup. And we'd been down there about half an hour, and suddenly this bang, bang, rattle, bang, 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 shouting, and it was a great big hulk of a guy who happened to be black, and it could have been white, could have been pink, could have been blue, but he happened to be black, and he was rattling the cage and demanding that he be unlocked so that he could go to the toilet. I need to go to the toilet, busty eye, all this. So anyway, the police sergeant, no reference to us, just went over, unlocked the big cage that he was in, a big metal cage, you know, something like you see at the zoo. Oh, seriously. Yeah, that's what they were. It's set into the ceiling, set into the floor. Yeah. Old, solid, great stone walls, you know. Anyway, he undid this chap who ostensibly wanted to go to the toilet, except he didn't go to the toilet. As soon as the police officer, police sergeant, had unlocked him, he grabbed him by the neck and started to strangle him, you know, like that, up against the wall, feet off the ground, you know, this police sergeant. He wasn't a particularly big police sergeant, but believe me, this big guy was pretty big, you know. John and I jumped up, ran over, and John said to the police sergeant, "Head to the left, Captain." So the guy put his head to the left, and John, who was a big guy, boom, like that, straight on the guy's jaw, poof, fell on the floor, and he started shaking, you know, like he was having a fit. Well, he was completely and utterly out of it, you know. Just let the guy on the floor. Me and John went, sat down again, drinking our tea, what was left of it, you know. And this police sergeant shaking himself round, you know, trying to get out of the idea that he'd been strangling to death. This guy's still on the floor, still flat out. And he came over to us and said, "I have to have a statement from you." "A statement? Yeah, about what?" He said, "Well, you've injured this guy. You know, he's unconscious. What am I going to do? I've got to have a statement from you." So we said, "Yeah, all right, I'll give you a statement." We didn't see anything. First thing we saw was him fall to the floor. I mean, what did you do to him, you know? I mean, there was this guy, police sergeant. We'd just saved him from being beaten, strangled by a giant 17-stone, great big muscular guy who'd had him off the floor. And this police sergeant, is covering his own backside, trying to stitch me and John up. Didn't get anywhere. Just said, "No, piss off. What are we going to do?" In them days, this is, of course, years before they had CCTV or anything like that. They should have got the police medal for that, for bravery. I mean, anybody with any sense would have run the other way. Hey, but not me and Maniac John. We went straight in there. I'll tell you another strange story. I was at Strangeways, and this is, I think it was 1983. Could have been 84. And there was a guy on the hospital wing on A1 Landing, and he was called Peter Murray, otherwise known as the Goit Valley Murderer. And he had been in Broadmoor. He was insane. You know, he was mad. He was a big fella too. Big fat guy though, you know. And what he'd done was he got a little team of acolytes, you know, young boys around him. And they'd been capturing people off the street, young men, tying them up to trees, wiring them up to trees, then sexually abusing them and strangling them to death. The Goit Valley Murders, yeah. He'd been in Broadmoor, and his great boast was that he was friends with Ronnie Kray. That's my mate from, you know, he thought that was a big deal, that he'd been in Broadmoor with Ronnie Kray. He should have stayed in Broadmoor. He threatened to murder me in the end. He said, if it takes 20 years, I'll come back and murder you, you bastard son. He died in prison. He never got round to murdering me. But I did drag him out of his cell by the top of his hair and throw him into the back of the van, taking him to Risley Prison, because he refused to get dressed in the clothes that I'd provided for him. So I said, that's all right, you don't need to get dressed. You're going naked. No, I'm not going naked. But, dear listeners, he went naked, kicking, screaming, and banging on the side of the van. But he went all the way to Risley. Grizzly Risley. And you know why they call it Grizzly Risley? Because they're all hanging themselves there. They didn't like it. Thank you very much for watching today's Tales from the Jails. And don't forget, it's called Psychic Screw. You recognise its name by now. It's my book. It's on Amazon. And by the way, if you've never been here before, please do subscribe. Thank you very much.